Okay, let me bring in Joy on this. Joy, I know you've been quiet for a while because the MPs are on complete opposing sides. But for you, having seen that, in the scenarios that the Mogaka was bringing up, the possible interferences, is it plausible based on what you had seen? Because we have more than 6 officials in every polling station. You'd have to compromise right from the police officer all the way to all these clerks for any of these scenarios that Mogaka was saying.
And I think, unfortunately, Honorable Mogaka has treated us to some whole truths and half lies. When he's painting scenarios of if there's no agent, then you take votes from this one and assign them to this one, and I'm listening and I'm thinking, like you said, I mean, how many people are you compromising to be able to do this systematically across? We had over 46,000 polling stations. Even just getting agents was a logistical nightmare. We have their own chief agent admitting that they had a problem in populating all these areas. Logistically, they were not able to. They have admitted it themselves that they had a problem with agents. And then he sits here and tells us, by the way, it's a fabrication, it's a narrative being pushed. You know, Angalao, some, treat us with a bit of dignity to allow us to look at this critically. But even if you did not have a single agent, IBC took it upon themselves to verify the results that were transmitted and the results that were received at Bomas. And at Bomas now, even if you couldn't send agents from across the country, you could send agents to Bomas to sit with the returning officer when he presented his original Form 34As and go through them, comparing with what was online. That was the responsibility of the party. If the party did not download, for example, what was on the portal, and arrive at Bomas and look and like, okay, let's verify this, and I told, okay, here, okay, what am I comparing with? That was your responsibility too. We have to arrive at a place where we cannot reward mediocrity and say, you know what, it's fine, you guys were not prepared for this, so you know what, everybody should treat you with kid gloves about it. For something as big as Azimio to be able to own up to some of these mistakes and learn from them, it will help them to do better in future than accusing everybody else of malpractices simply because you did not have an agent there. But not having an agent is not an excuse for the process to be marred, and which is why we have scrutiny now. And which is why we have the petition that has been listed being told, okay, you know what, let's look at this snippet and see whether it is representative of what may have happened. Then in that case, if they do the counting, for example, and they do realize that Wajakoya actually got 5,000 votes and was given 55, and the rest were loaded elsewhere, then we can be like, oh, you know what, I owe Mogaka an apology because maybe his theory was right. That is one point of it. The other point is, where could this vote have been stolen? Having been a participant from the back end now, not as an aspirant, but as part of civil society and in political party, the thing that I realize is, if you are going to steal these particular elections, you did it at the ballot. You made sure that you got as many ballots in the box as possible. Now, it wasn't enough to just get the ballot in the box. You had to find a way of having those voters counter-identified on the KIMS kit. So it was a double whammy. You had to find a way of identifying people either on KIMS kit or manually in the register so that you get more ballot papers into the ballot box. Because once it was in the ballot box and it was sealed and then the counting was done, the process that Mheshimiwa has explained was actually fairly foolproof, because the Form 34A was married to a particular polling station, which was married to a particular KIMS kit. You couldn't even use this KIMS kit from this polling station in the next polling station. It was married to the particular polling station. Secondly, it was allowed to take only one image. So the first image you took, that was it. You couldn't come back and create a new Form 34A and take a second image and transmit. One from every polling station. Then in addition to that, the returning officer had to physically carry all his Form 34As. Now this is the constituency returning officer, and come with them to Bomas. And then you go through each and every single one according to what was uploaded. So the person who uploaded is the returning officer, is the presiding officer from the polling station. That's the guy who uploaded. But the guy who's taking responsibility is the returning officer from the constituency. So he's not the one who prepared them, but he's the one who has ferried them in person to Bomas. So if you did not get enough ballots into, if you are stealing, if you did not get enough ballots into the box, chances of you amending along the way became slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And from what I saw, if there was inconsistency with the physical Form 34A and what was entered in the Form 34B, because the 34B was an auto-generated one, so it was numeric. It was not an image. It was numbers. If the numbers in the Form 34B did not agree with the numbers of the physical hard copy original that had the 9 security features, then you amended the Form 34B according to what you saw in the Form 34A, and it was done in the presence of the agents of all the parties, 2 IBC officials and observers. And everybody agrees, okay, so did we see that this was supposed to be this? Yes. And that was done, and an error report generated. And all these have been taken to the Supreme Court for further scrutiny, and I imagine along the way, IBC will be producing some of them. So at the end of the day, any changes that were made, any discrepancies that were made were all logged. And so it should be very easy to ascertain whether or not there was interference. And even, I agree with Mogaka on one thing, the fact that even scrutiny has been allowed of the servers, this time around gives a lot more clarity into the process, because I think one of the lessons that we have learned is opacity does not help.
Yeah.
And so it is important for people to have some level of transparency to see what went on, because when something is completely obscured, then it becomes difficult for you to believe at face value what you've been told. But at the same time, because the technology that we have invested, that security features, that if compromised means we have to procure afresh, the level of that investment also has to be protected. And that's why the access this time around, unlike before where the order was just open the servers, now it's like, you know what, you have supervised access. So that tells me they need the IBC officers to get into the system. They're only allowed to observe what's going on, and they're not given access to get into the system themselves.